Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Aamaan and today I'm joined by Mr. Jaithirth. He's a retired entrepreneur and a columnist. He writes regularly for us. And in his latest column, he has written about tax reforms. He has suggested three tax reforms that should be brought to increase ease of living and to build the trust between citizens and the state. So, Mr. Rao, all eyes are on the budget 2026. Uh, the stakeholders, experts have all come up with their expectations from Nirmala Sitharaman. And but in your article, you have written that there need to be some tax reforms that need to be brought. And we'll begin with the first suggestion that you have for the finance minister, which is that when a tax litigation is filed, if the government loses the case in the tribunal, so it shouldn't appeal further. So why do you say so? If you could please expand.
See, a tribunal is a quasi-judicial judicial body. So what we do now is, if the government loses in the tribunal, they appeal to the High Court. If they lose in the High Court, they appeal to the Supreme Court. So first of all, there's a huge number of tax litigation that is clogging up both the High Court and the Supreme Court. And one of the things in ease of living for citizens is to declog the judicial mechanism. So this is unnecessary. The real thing is the tribunal has been set up by the government in its wisdom to adjudicate this matter. It's an independent entity. It has some eminent people. Whenever I've raised this issue with anybody from the government, any civil servant, their immediate response has been, oh, tribunal members are crooked. They're corrupt. The assessee will fix them, so we can't trust them. And that's a very silly position. Then why have a tribunal? Why are we, as citizens, funding a body which, if it's supposed to be corrupt? Frankly, they are chosen with great due diligence. One or two corrupt people may get in, but that can happen in the High Court, that can happen in the Supreme Court, that can happen in any institution. So, given the Prime Minister's vehement kind of assertion that ease of living is important, the citizen-state trust relationship is important, and those have to be the cornerstones of reforms as we implement them now. I think this would be a very good one because it would cut out years of litigation, costs, uncertainty, and it would oil and lubricate the economic machine of the country, the companies and individuals who are doing these appeals much more. And I think it might add a percentage to the GDP. It would certainly be a great fillip to the financial markets. Because right now, all tax litigation, one just assumes it's endless. First commissioner, then a assessing commissioner, then tribunal, then High Court, then Supreme Court. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, one of the ways that people try to get around it is, yeah, you're right. All small items, we won't appeal. And all items where there is no major issue of law, we won't appeal. But if there is a major legal issue, or the amount exceeds something, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, something, then we will appeal. And I have said this is also a very silly approach because we know how our government works. We know how our departments work. If I'm a competent, honest income tax officer, and I say, okay, this man owes 90,000 rupees, it's less than 1 lakh. Let me not appeal. I have lost the adjudication in the tribunal. I won't appeal. The same day, same evening, one of his envious colleagues will write an anonymous complaint saying that he deliberately didn't include interest and penalty. If he had, it would have exceeded 1 lakh. So he has taken a bribe from the assessee. So, given that kind of situation that we are in, and there's revenue loss, as if there's massive revenue loss. Most of these litigations, the state loses anyway. So, there's hardly any revenue loss. Uh, so, uh, so then the honest, competent officer has no incentive not to appeal. He'll simply say, go ahead, appeal. Everything gets into the appeal. And what is a major legal matter, minor legal matter? That also, an anonymous letter will certainly come. Actually, this is a major legal matter, but this officer ruled it as a minor legal matter. So you basically clog and paralyze any attempt to get rid of appeals for small amounts or minor amounts. So it has to be a simple rule. You lose the appeal, no further appeals, period. Amount should not come up, um, uh, whether it's a major legal issue or minor legal issue. The moment you introduce that, you introduce discretion, you introduce the ability of mischievous people to question honest and competent and transparent officers. So then they get demotivated and won't do their job properly. So that you actually create a very cynical system. So this is my suggestion: drop all appeals if you lose at the tribunal. I don't think the revenue loss is a lot, because it takes 15 years anyway to go through the court and most of the time you lose. So it's not worth it, is my opinion. And it should be made simple like that.
You've also written that tax lawyers specifically would oppose such kind of reform.
Yeah, because they make a lot of money in High Court appeals, Supreme Court appeals. A lot of taxation cases are stuck in High Courts and Supreme Court. So tax lawyers have an incentive not to change the present system. Endless appeals helps lawyers. They get more fees. Every time an appeal is filed, they get more fees. So this idea of keeping the litigation going through appeals is a straight incentive for lawyers, and they will oppose it, and they will come up with all these issues. Revenue loss to the government, or legal issues not properly resolved at tribunal level, all kinds of things. Well, I don't think we should listen to them. The country should run for its citizens, not for a small bunch of lawyers, even though they do have disproportionate influence, and we should not underestimate their ability to stymie this.
Now, coming to the second suggestion you have for the finance minister, that is that the decriminalization mantra of the government should be extended to the tax matters also. So, could you expand on it, please?
Manish Sabharwal was telling me that there are 38 provisions in tax areas which are criminal provisions. I'm sure if they did an analysis of it, 36 they can drop tomorrow, and the other two they can probably modify and make them civil. It's not necessary. And the government has been doing, and the Prime Minister has spoken about decriminalization as a major effort that the government is pushing through. I don't know, over the years, starting with the British period and independent India, we simply kept on accumulating criminal provisions for all kinds of actions. You're late, you're this, you're that, criminal, criminal, criminal. What happens, of course, is most of these cases never get filed as criminal cases. It's the mere threat, that allows for corruption and bribery in order to avoid it. Many people pay up and settle because it's not worth their taking the risk of criminal. So it only increases greater cynicism in the country. Very rarely are the criminal provisions actually utilized. They are threatened, and that's what it's all about. So I think we should do a complete analysis of all 38 and see how many in the present, in labor and so many other areas, we are decriminalizing provisions, we should decriminalize in the tax area also.
So, in your third suggestion, you have highlighted how tax officials are given revenue targets, but you are arguing that this is not the way to operate.
Isn't it
Uh,
a isn't it a kind of funny thing that Ministry of Finance tax officials have targets, but HRD Ministry, Education Joint Secretary, etc., has no targets. Health Ministry, they have no targets. The only people in the government who have targets are tax officials, and they are judged against their targets. I think this is a very mischievous, insidious, dangerous provision we have. I think it started, by the way, by the British, because they were primarily into revenue collection. They saw that as their primary government activity. So they used to give incentives to people to collect. The Tahsildar who collected more, the collector who collected more, the official who collected more was rewarded, promoted. And that has carried on into independent India. So tax officials have targets. Now, what is the easiest way to meet a target? You catch hold of a company or an individual and you give them a demand, pay 10 lakhs. Right, then the assessee says, but this is an invalid demand. Doesn't matter, you can appeal. But you have to pay a certain percentage of that 10 lakhs before you appeal. And that helps me meet my target. I have met my target for the year. If I do 20 such totally illegitimate demands, but they're demands. And to appeal, you have to pay something. You can't just appeal without paying anything. So this, we actually have created an extremely dangerous set of incentives for assessing officers. And then we can't blame them for behaving unreasonably. They will behave unreasonably because they are judged by how much they collect. And it doesn't matter if they make an onerous and unjustified demand. If a portion of that is paid during the appeal process, that goes towards the target, and they come out like heroes. So what, you, I, anyone in our jobs, in your job, in print, if you're given an incentive, you do this, you will become a hero, then you're going to do that. So we have given them actually the most vicious of incentives. And I've gone on to say, apart from this being a kind of an economics incentive problem, it's also a moral problem. It's a dharmic problem. None of our great political thinkers, Bhishma in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata, or Tiruvalluvar in Tirukkural, or Kautilya Chanakya in the Arthashastra, would have approved of targets for government officials. They would have said it is adharmic, it should not be given. You're incentivizing people to behave in an adharmic way, to become extractors rather than officials serving the people. They become like kind of. In fact, Nirmala Sitharaman made that in one of her speeches in Parliament. She said tax collection should be gentle like the bee getting honey out of a flower, quoting Chanakya. This is not. Setting targets is not gentle bee collecting honey. This is extracting. This is really makes the tax collector almost a wicked person, because you're incentivizing the tax collector to behave in an inhuman and unjust way. So the job of the tax officer is to implement the law fairly and justly. So if my return is wrong, of course, he should say, hey, pay up. If the return is right, he should say yes. His job is not to collect towards a target. I think this is one of the most corrupt, actually, that's the word I can think, because it corrupts, corrodes the very soul of the system by giving officials these targets and then judging them on that. Judging them on, how many disallowances. These are not the ways to judge. Is the assessment reasonable? And yes, have things been caught, some hanky panky? Yes. Have good things been left through correctly and quickly and efficiently? That's the way the person should be judged, not by the person meeting targets. None of our great thinkers of our country would have approved of it, and I think it should go. It is adharmic, and we are trying to build a country which lives up to the best ideals of our past, even as we explore space and go into the future with AI or whatever. We still want to live up to the best traditions of our past. And the best traditions of our past would have absolutely frowned on this target business. In fact, Chanakya said Shadbhaga, 1/6. Don't try and collect more than that. This business of trying to squeeze out a little bit more, this is like medieval feudal lords in Europe who try to squeeze the peasants, or all the time. That is not how a dharmic modern Indian state should behave, and we should free our revenue officers from this burden of targets, and they should stop being the Indian Extraction Service, and they should revert to their original name of Indian Revenue Service.
So these were the three suggestions you have for the finance minister.
Yeah.
Now, to conclude, in brief, if you could tell what the 2026 budget should look at. I mean, the area should,
I don't know. I'm not,
in terms of to increase ease of living and to build the trust between the taxpayers
yeah,
and the state.
these are the kinds of things. These are fundamental reforms. These are philosophical reforms. And this is what the Prime Minister has been emphasizing. Not just, little bit here, little bit there, but actually let us make some, to take several hundred laws and decriminalize them at one stroke, to get rid of this silly thing that any will written in Bombay, Calcutta, and Chennai need a probate. This is some old British era presidency regulations. These are things that we've been doing, and we have to make use of the momentum now and the full support of the Prime Minister to get this done. If we don't get this done, we won't get this done in another 5 years, 10 years, because this is the time. It is an idea whose time has come, as Victor Hugo said, and it is a time when these fundamental philosophical reforms have to be made. And this goes more than saying, increase capital gains tax rate or reduce income tax marginal rate. Those are things that chambers of commerce, others will be giving their suggestions. I was intrigued by the fact that so many laws were suddenly decriminalized. The new labor codes were announced. So many things have been happening in the last few weeks. I said this is the time that we must revisit some fundamental reforms in the tax landscape. And these are my humble suggestions to the Finance Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rao. That was very insightful.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
we look forward to another session with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.